Okay, so I want to start off this conversation. Firstly, Jereshia, I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Thanks. I'm pumped too. Like I said, I have like the energy the day after a Beyonce concert going on right now. So I'm amped up to be here.
All right. Well, welcome to the Daily Success Show. I know you have so many nuggets to share today. So I want to go ahead and jump right in to your sales expertise, starting off with what are 3 common mistakes that you see women entrepreneurs making when it comes to selling?
First thing, I'm like so glad that you're just diving right on into the juicy parts. But the first mistake that we see a lot of women, a lot of individuals like with different ethnic backgrounds making a lot of time is they don't qualify their rates. So what I mean by qualifying their rates is a lot of the time when people are just getting started, or maybe they've been in business for a little bit, I noticed that we more than other demographics will undervalue and underprice and underqualify ourselves almost out of the gate. Yes. And I think the reason being for that is a lot of us have probably experienced that in some, corporate 9-to-5 job, or we maybe have experienced it in some other, container in our life. And we are subconsciously recreating that even when we start building our own business without even fully being aware of it. So we're so used to being like underqualified, underpaid, having to work twice, provide twice as much to get paid half, provide twice as much to get paid half as much type of thing. Then we start our business and we inherently recreate the exact same thing that we're trying to escape, but this time you can't blame it on the white man. So that's probably one of the biggest mistakes we see people making from the get-go is they do not qualify their rates and actually understand, okay, because before, they're waiting for somebody else to tell them how much something is valued at. And now as a business owner, as you're presenting your services, it's your responsibility to kind of create that perceived value of what your offer is and what the return on investment is going to be to help inform and dictate your price. So that's like the biggest one.
Okay, that's good.
I'd say the second biggest issue we notice with people when it comes to pricing their services in the beginning, like I said, is qualifying their rates. I'd say secondly is actually, feeling confident behind what their rates are and like charging their full price.
Yeah.
And I said the third thing is not just with even having the confidence to state your rate, but feeling as if you have to cowl and buckle down if you experience an objection. Kind of like that caveat with that is a lot of the time we know that we need to be charging more. We know that we need to raise our rates. We'll go into a sales conversation, and because of either one, we project our limiting beliefs onto our prospects, where it's like, this person isn't going to pay that. Why? Like, who am I? And then we will talk ourselves out of a sale. Like, yeah, my services are $3,000, but because it's, Friday, and we're about to go into daylight savings, we're going to give you a special discount and make it $2,000. Is that cool? You just talked yourself into a discount.
Yeah.
Or the other caveat happens is if you do state your rate and the moment you experience an objection, you start to get discouraged and you start to feel defeated, and you just start offering discounts because you think that's the only option. So I think those are some of the 3 biggest mistakes that we notice.
Yeah, those are so good. I see that a lot where women are, just putting themselves on sale. It's like you go on fire sale because you feel unconfident about what you offered. You hear that what do you call it? Like that awkward silence after you announce the price. And then you're like, oh, but I can give it to you for 50% off, right. So I love those. Those are perfect. So can you share your thoughts? I know you talk a lot about that there are 3 phases of business that every entrepreneur goes through. Can you share a little bit about that methodology that you have and what actions should service business owners be taking at each of those 3 different phases that you talk about, the 3 M's that you...
Oh, okay. I was going to ask which model. I know I've explained this in a couple of different formats.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like the money, manage, and multiply?
Yes.
That one was so good. But when it comes to the stages of business, I think a lot of the time we can improperly diagnose what our current problem is. And it can get you in a point when you're in your business where you start making decisions to try to solve problems that are beyond the phase that you're currently at. And it can be really discouraging or defeating when you do that as well, is because you start solving problems that aren't actually real problems today. and you start exerting your resources, your capital, your time, your energy, and you're wondering, why am I not seeing the momentum? But I really look at business as 3 phases. The first one being money, second phase being manage, the third phase being multiply. And if you're in phase 1 of money, the number one objective when you're starting a business is you need to get really good at articulating the value of what you do and enrolling clients into your vision and closing clients on sales calls. Like, you just need to make money. That is all you need to do in the beginning. You do not need to be doing like the fancy pantsy stuff, trying to figure out how to run webinars or how to leverage Facebook ads. You just need to understand the foundational aspects of your business is like, what promise am I delivering? How do I articulate the value of that in a way that somebody else understands? And how do I get the sale? Like, if you can just nail that aspect down, we do not need to be worried about, how do I scale? How do I put systems in place? You don't need to worry about none of that. The only system you need to have in the beginning is perfecting your sales system. How am I, like, how are you making contact with prospects? How are you sparking opportunities for dialogue and engagement? How are you guiding them through to get them to a yes? That is all you need to be worried about. After you can get a good grasp on, like, okay, I know what problem I'm solving. I have a really good understanding on what promise it is that I'm delivering. I kind of got a good feeling of how to articulate it. People are signing up. They're seeing that value. They're getting that value because you're doing a good job are communicating it. Then we move into manage. And the management phase is really all about, you know how to make money, but now how do we start to manage these things? That's when we start to actually think about your operational back end, your organizational chart. How do you start duplicating yourself by creating replicatable systems so you can hire team members to come in? How are you also managing your cash flow? A lot of time in the money phase, you can get pretty far off of pure hustle. Like, yeah. I got to 150K my first year in business. I mean, I think quite frankly, just due to being naive, I didn't know what I couldn't do. Like, I'm just like, well, but I was always focused on sales and focused on solving a problem. And we got to 150K while I was still working my 9-to-5 job as a full-time engineer. Then I was like, oh crap, now I've made all this money. How do I manage it? How do I, maintain consistency in my cash flow? How do I make sure that I'm adequately moving my resources to account for taxes? So management is all about, like, how do you sustain and maintain this little thing that you just built, and how do you also position and kind of set yourself up to scale, but you're not scaling yet. Yes. Management phase is all about like leverage. And then after you got to a point where you have a really good grasp on like, okay, our processes are like running like a machine. We got some things that are repeatable. We have a good system in place to create predictable, consistent cash flow. Then it's like, how can we start to multiply? And I look at multiplying as a true area of scaling, because your foundation is set. If a lead comes your way, you know what that client journey needs to look like to go from they discover you to the point of acquisition. You know how to deliver your service. You're solid on the back end of what steps. You have a proven process probably documented at this point. And then it's like, let's just put gas on the fire and really amplify this solid foundation that we've put in place. So that's kind of how I look at business trajectory. And for context, we did 340 grand in 2019. We're on track this year to do $1 million. I still look at myself being in management phase, just for context. So that's how I look at the different phases or seasons of business.
Okay, this is excellent. So let's talk about, in that management phase right now, what systems are you currently putting in place that are setting your business up to be able to get to that $1 million in revenue?
Really great question. It's kind of twofold. It's like what happens before we get the customer and what happens after. Okay. So this year, we're really focusing on like dialing in refinement, like how can we make these micro improvements that have massive impact and momentum on the back end. So a system that an example of this is we're calling it the champagne closer. It was so good, I had to put it in a framework so I could teach my clients it. But because it works, and it was like, this is so good, I need to teach this to my clients. But so even like a system, what I mean by management is, an example of this is like when somebody books a sales call, the time between when they book that call to the time when they actually get on the sales call is a really critical time period. most people just, somebody books a call, kind of nothing happens. They receive a reminder email from Acuity Scheduling, and then you hop on a sales call, right? That's like most people's process. I noticed that I'm like, what can we do to decrease our number of follow-up calls that are needed to get to a decision? And how can I increase my sales call conversion rate on this first call? So we added in an additional assessment in between when somebody books a call and when they get on the call. So they can now, we've already qualified them through their application, but now they're able to qualify themselves. So now when we get on the sales call, I don't have to explain to them what my program is. That video already does it, and they're already self-assessed. That alone, we've been able to make an extra $160,000 this year by adding that one thing. So that's what I mean by like management. It's like really, that's an example of like a before the sales, before we get the sale. Another thing we're doing before this sale is really documenting our process so we can leverage and repurpose my marketing content.
Okay.
Up until this point in our business, like we've spent maybe $20,000 on Facebook ads since I've been in business. It's like, that's nothing.
Yeah, compared to what people are spending today. Yeah.
Yeah, like our business has been grown because of organic sales and organic marketing tactics. And that was done very intentionally. I'm like, if I know that I can get to $250,000, $500,000 off of organic strategies, any of these extra paid things that we do are going to be like, I know we'll make a crap ton of money doing it because a foundation is laid.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you say that. I tell that people all the time. Facebook ads, like you said earlier, are like fueling the fire, and people want to fuel a fire that they don't have a system behind.
Oh, they ain't got no sticks.
Yeah,
like,
right.
There's no fire to fuel. Like,
right, yes.
You know, you rubbing two pennies together, hoping something's gonna pop off. Like it doesn't work like that. So another thing that we're doing is getting a lot more just like documented in our regimen for repurposing my marketing content. So I do at least one live video a week. And my team has been creating a process, because before I was doing this. So it's like, what's the process so we can hand this off? So Jessica, she's our marketing admin. She's responsible now for taking my live stream videos and repurposing them and leveraging that one live video as much as possible. So we have a really solid Facebook group strategy around this that's been working for, you know, the last year and a half. But we're like, how can we double down on our organic Instagram you know, strategy, just again, leveraging my live video content. So that's something that we're doing now. Like, we're pretty savvy with how we do this, but we just want to dial it in and sharpen it up. So those are two systems that we're putting in place to better manage contact with clients, you know, increasing conversion rates, decreasing our time spent on follow-up sales calls before the sale. Things that we're doing after the sale, we've been really intentional on, like, those first 30 days after a client enrolls with us are very, again, another critical time period. What are all the points of contact that we're getting that prospect after they say yes? So an example of this inside of services that sell, the day that you enroll, you receive a text message from our team. A week later, you're receiving a postcard from our team. 15 days later, 15 days is intentional. We know our clients typically have a mindset freak out on day 14. Yeah. We call them on the 15th day and just say, surprise, hey, just checking in.
Right.
I know you probably are freaking out right now. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did you know? I'm like, because we have documented and tracked our students long enough to know where they have those. We can anticipate when those moments happen.
Yeah.
So we're just, you know, that's an example of like what happens after the sale. That process for services that sell is very much refined. We're documenting that process now for my new leverage program. And just putting systems in place on like how to escalate issues is one that I'm working on, like I was working on last night. Okay. So those are just some things and examples of like processes. I think people say systems and it's like kind of a vague, what does that mean? But those are some
people don't know. Yeah, I love that. Those were great examples. So one follow-up question in terms of the sales call to the time in between the book call and sales call. So you're saying you have, sounds like an application and a video that you're giving them that kind of warms them up, that tells them a little bit about the program.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times during sales calls, you have to realize there's two objectives that are happening. You, who, like the business owner, your objective is how do I get the client? Your client, their objective is how do I get free information? And there's two different sets of expectations going into this sales conversation. most business owners that we know probably see, maybe even yourself, either don't do anything to qualify their prospect to make sure that they're actually the problem that the prospect has aligns with the solution that's being provided. A lot of people do a really poor job of qualifying. Some people at best will have like some sort of questionnaire before somebody gets on a call with them. That's you qualifying the prospect. What we've noticed, and just again, through tracking the data, paying attention to the numbers, seeing what works, is that like, again, we want to realign those expectations to make sure both people are coming into the conversation on the same page. Normally you at best will qualify the prospect. Hopefully you're doing that well. But most of the time the client, the prospect is never qualifying themselves, where they're buying in and have full belief once they get on the call that they actually need you. How are you doing that prior to having to convince them once you get on the sales conversation? So that's something that, again, like this whole management phase, how can we just double down and increase the metrics of where we currently are on these micro things, and adding in this, we qualify them after they book the call, they qualify themselves. And then we get on the sales call for a decision to be made. I call it the champagne closer, because in luxury real estate, if you're selling like a $10 million home, like all you have to do as a seller is just bring the right people in the house and pour the champagne.
Yeah.
The house sells itself.
Right.
And I'm like, how can I emulate that in my own business? And that's why we do this champagne closer process now. That's why we call it that, because when you put in an assessment of some sort to allow the prospect to qualify themselves before they get on the sales call, you're not doing any selling on the call. You're just pouring the champagne and walking the person through the house, basically. So, and that's what we've noticed. Like literally, the program that we do that process with is a 5-figure program. And every single person who's been qualified is bought. I mean, I was telling my coach, I'm like, this is insane. Like, right. I can't believe we have 100% close rate. He's like, at the next event, you're teaching this in a breakout session. I was like, so it's like, again, but like any business owner can do this. Is just like, if you can kind of get a baseline on, okay, what's our data for today? Not that it's good or that it's bad, just what's your baseline on your metrics across the board with everything that you're doing. And then it's like, okay, what micro improvements can we make that will have a significant impact on our revenue or on the quality at which we're able to support our clients? And then that's what I mean by management. I think I'm going to be in the management phase for a little while longer.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there for sure.
Yeah.
I love this. So if you are not already taking notes, you're tripping. Get your pen and get your pen and paper out. Start rewinding. These are some great nuggets that Jereshia is dropping today. So thankful for this. And I love what you're saying about this in particular, because what I have noticed in this same exact process that you're talking about is if you haven't in some way prepared a person before they get on the call, a lot of times what they're doing is unqualifying themselves. Right? They're thinking about all the reasons why or why not they should do this, right? Like, oh, well, I don't know if I fit with everyone else in your community. I don't know if I'm this. I don't know if I'm that. Like they're in that call trying to figure it out. But what you're saying is you can actually have them go through a process before they even get on the call. So they've thought through all about that, and you know you're a great fit for each other. And you're just popping bottles. I love it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So for someone that is loving everything that we're talking about here, but doesn't really have a sales process in place, right? So for the business owner who's listening, who does have clients, but has been getting clients and is getting results for those clients, but doesn't have any kind of sales system, how do you recommend that they get started? What are some of those initial things that they should put in place?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is you have a system even if you don't have it documented, or if you don't even realize you have one, because there's things that you're doing that are producing the result that you're getting. You just maybe haven't looked at it as a system yet. So one thing that I recommend for everybody to do is actually sit down, schedule, I call them like CEO days, or call them super thinking time. Yeah. And schedule an hour in your calendar, 2 hours, and just literally think back on what were all of the things that I did to get this yes from this client, and literally like write it out. that is a system. Now you can look at that system and say, is it producing the results that I want? And then if not, okay, what do I need to do to my system to enhance it, to make it better, to make it more, some people have systems, but they're too complicated, or they have systems, but it's very difficult to implement consistently. A lot of our clients are typically in that boat because, you know, they're either still working a 9-to-5 or they're a solopreneur and they don't have a large team yet. And if you're trying to do like these super advanced, big, fancy, dynamic, multi-layered launches, that system might work, but you may not have capacity or the bandwidth in this season of your business to implement it consistently. So I would first document what are all the things that you're doing, and okay, look at this system and say, is this something that I can continue to execute at the way that it's going? Is it producing the results or the conversions that I want? And if it is, then just like keep doing that thing. If it's not, I would say, you know, then that you start to evaluate what is it that you need. You either need to go learn a new system from somebody else if your system doesn't work at all. Do you need to, like I said, you know, sometimes I enroll in programs not because I need everything that they teach, but because I just need that one thing that will be a micro improvement for me. And sometimes investing that $2,000 for the course or enrolling in the coaching program for whatever it is, that one nugget for me sometimes is enough. I don't need everything. So you might just need to pinpoint where are the gaps in your system. And like I said, that conversion rate, like going from, you know, because if you have a high number of people who ghost you, the champagne closer eliminates that, because people get elicited in, they are excited to get on the call with you because they want to talk about their results. It also is like, what happens if they don't say yes on the first call? Like, is it that you keep getting people who are ghosting you before they make a decision? So it's like, you can start to notice where your gaps are in your sales process. And then, like I said, typically I'm a big believer in like, you don't need to go reinvent the wheel. Just go learn from somebody who can teach you how to sharpen those things up so you can get more focused on doing what you do well versus, you know, guessing constantly at trying to how to make this better. But first thing I would do is document what it is that you're doing and see what your system is and evaluate it.
Okay, I like that. So let's talk about the types of clients that we're attracting, because I can't tell you how many times I hear our Achiever Club members or just entrepreneurs in general who are saying, for some reason, I keep attracting the broke people. For some reason, you know, I want to figure out how to attract those high paying clients, right? So what tips can you give for, you know, pre-call, right? Like, what should business owners be doing to better pre-qualify potential clients?
Yes. First thing is first. If you are attracting an audience of people that you do not like, the only person you can blame is yourself. Because you created the content that attracted them in the first place. So I think that's like a huge wake. We literally talked about this very, very in depth during the right response training that we just did, which is a new training that we're doing that will help overcome sales objections. And this question came up and I said that and they're like, okay, Jay, my wig is all the way off now. It's snatched. And it's true though. Like there's just a different, if you're selling a higher end, like a high touch, high ticket program, that's, you know, you're trying to attract those premium clients, the way that you deliver your content needs to align with the perceived value of what they're going to see when they see your content. And it also needs to align with the psychology of how they make buying decisions. One of the big aha moments that our clients had yesterday when we were doing this training is that the content that they're putting out, the reason why they're attracting people who don't have money is a direct reflection of either one, their own individual mindset, because subconsciously how they show up is very much reflected in what they're producing. And so I would ask the question, if you keep attracting people who don't commit to their decisions, who are constantly asking for discounts, who, you know, are like wishy-washy, first thing I would do, especially if that's the type of audience you're attracting, is like, is that how you are when you go look to hire a coach? Is that what you do when you're like, I know I need this, but no, I'm going to no. So your energy, if that's we notice if that's a lot of the audience that you attract, a lot of the time, it's normally a direct reflection of how you behave when you make buying decisions. And that energy, when that's the dynamic, normally it bleeds into everything else you do, whether you consciously recognize it or not. So that's the first thing I was, you know, be like Michael Jackson, look in the mirror. Second thing is, if that's not you and you're like, I invest, I'm showing up, but for whatever reason I'm doing this, I'm not attracting the right caliber of clientele, a lot of the time it has nothing to do with the money objection. It has everything to do with like how well defined your program promise is and how strategically you're positioned in the marketplace. So we were doing like sales objection role playing last night on the call, and half the people, the issue with I keep getting the money objection, or people keep wanting, I get the time objection. It had nothing to do with money or time. It had everything to do because their program offer, their promise of that program was not clearly defined. And they weren't doing a good job of articulating how their program was going to solve the problem for that prospect. Mm-hmm. So all of your content that you put out on social media or whatever should be pre-qualifying your audience. That is the purpose of that content. The role of that content is to pre-qualify your audience. But if you do not have a clearly defined program promise, and we call it like the POP method, where you've picked one problem, you've picked one person, you've packaged one process, like a documented your process, those three things go into what your program like promise is. And it needs to be dialed in it needs to be dialed in a niche. And if you're like, well, I just help women grow their business, we're attracting a million different types of people. Yeah. Versus if your program promise is, I help coaches who want to enroll $1,500 to $15,000 one-on-one clients using organic sales strategies, I'm still helping women grow their business, but the promise is very different. Yes. Than I help you grow your business. So a lot of the time, if you're experiencing that, it has nothing to do with money or time. It has everything to do with how clearly defined you have packaged your offer, how well you've articulated the promise, and how effectively you're doing a good job communicating that through your free content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. It makes me excited too that you talked about on your session, you said that you went over some common objections. And that was actually the next thing I was going to ask you about, what would be, because the other common one that people talk about is, besides the money one, right? That's probably number one.
Everybody.
The second biggest one that I hear business owners talking about is the partner one. I have to go talk to my husband.
Oh.
Yeah. So what advice?
I love this objection.
Yes. So what advice would you give for people that hear that objection?
Okay, guys, this is where you need to screen record your phone while you're listening. This is one that you will play back. Okay. So I love the spousal objection. Because a lot of the time, one, I honor that, I didn't really get that before until I just got engaged. I'm like, why you got to talk to your man to make a decision? Now I have one and I'm like, okay, sometimes depending on the investment level, it doesn't need, it's not that I need his approval, but we need to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So I honor that in my clients. But before a client gets off the phone, if they're like, hey, this sounds like everything that I want in love, I know this is exactly what I need, but I just need to discuss it with my husband and circle back. Before we get the call, be like, I totally understand that. What questions will your husband have? Or what questions will your wife have? What questions will your partner have? And a lot of the time, especially if your client is a woman, most women that I've noticed, when they get really excited about something that they want and they go tell their partner about it, they're like, oh my gosh, I love her. I know this is what I need. They speak all from an emotional place, which is great. A lot of the time, if their partner is a man,
yes, they're
like, okay, that's cool that she's dope, but what's the money gonna look like?
Right.
How is this different than all the other stuff that you bought that quote unquote didn't work? And why this, why now? And what's the ROI gonna be? They're very much more intellectually based on how they make their decisions versus being they're more logically based versus as emotional. Yes. And I like to coach my clients on how they're gonna coach their husbands and communicate to them on the value. So I always will ask, well, what questions will your husband have? Oh, he's going to want to know, I've already invested in stuff like this before and it did not work out. He's going to be really concerned about whether or not this is going to be a good fit now. I'm like, that totally makes sense. Why is this different than what you've done before? So I coach them on their answers before they leave me. So they're equipped to go actually have a proper conversation with their partner that's not just all emotionally based.
Yeah.
Another add-on, I'll give you guys this as a bonus. Don't tell anybody I'm doing this, guys, or tell everybody, actually, I don't know. This is good stuff. You share it with your friends. But the other thing that I've done is I'll normally ask the question of like, once you get this result, how is this not going to only impact your business, but how is this going to impact your life? And they'll normally start talking about their family, their partner, all of those things. And after the call, I normally will make a video that speaks to the partner. Hey, Don, I know I had a really great time talking today with your wife. She is so excited to take her business to the next level. I know you guys you've been really a supportive partner with her, supporting her through this journey. Like, kudos to you, because I know entrepreneurial life, it's crazy out here. And then you'll speak to whatever it was that his concerns were that they told you. And like that normally is like the icing on the cake. Like, I normally,
That's great.
Yeah, we literally had a client, how much, I think I was selling the program at the time for like 15 grand. I can't remember which program it was. It was like $15,000 or $18,000. It was 15 grand. Mm-hmm. And a client on the phone, when I was talking to her, she was like, we can't do this. Like, I do not have the money for it. I can't do it. And she's like, I'm going to go talk to my husband about it. But like, I know we don't have the money. I can't even do the payment plan. But I did this, made the video. She came back and paid in full the next day.
What?
I fell off the couch. I was like, it's never that people don't have the money. You haven't done a good enough job yet of not making them, but getting to a point where they have self-belief to know that if they spend this money with you, that it's going to be worthwhile for them.
Yes. Money
objection, partner objection, all those things a lot of the time go back down to value. Do they think the perceived value and the calculated return is worth the price that you're trying to sell it at? That's all it boils down to.
Yes, that's so true. Oh, that was good. That was so good. So let's talk about one of your specialties, which is selling on live video. So I'd love to hear, why do you think live video is such an effective sales tool?
Oh my gosh, I love video. Like, love, love, love video. While we're recording this right now, I look a hot mess, no makeup, bags under my eye. But I did a live stream video before we went on today. And we got 2 sales. We made like $2,500, and that was there was no call to action.
Okay, so if you're listening, she's totally exaggerating. She looks great. This may not be her with like makeup and done up, but you look totally fine.
I'm like, oh girl, I told you. It's like the day after a Beyonce concert. I'm exhausted. But I think live video is so powerful for a couple of different reasons. When you are selling virtually, like, we already have this computer screen as a barrier between you and your prospect. And my thing is, we talk about know, like, and trust all the time online, but what can you do to kind of just build connection with the prospect even through the screen? And video is the fastest way to do that. Somebody can read your words and fall in love with you, like, intellectually there, but there's a different connection that gets formed when somebody can see you, hear you, see your body language. Like, I know I have so many people who DM me, and it's like, I feel like we are like best friends and I've never met you before. And it's because that connection is created through video. So that's one reason why I prioritize video content over audio or over written. The second thing is, like I mentioned before, our sales strategy is based on like direct response organic marketing. So I want to leverage social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Everybody prioritizes live video content over any other medium. So if you're on your Facebook business page and you post like a quote with a Canva image, you can expect 1 to 2% of organic reach. And like, literally go on your Facebook business page and like, go look at the data. How many likes do you have? Go look at a stagnant image. At best, you'll get 1 to 2% of organic. You'll get, maybe if you have 200 people, you'll get 2 likes. However, if you do a live video on your Facebook business page, Facebook prioritizes live video content. You'll automatically get somewhere between 10 and 16% of organic reach that you didn't have to pay anything extra for. And a large part of the organic strategy in the social game is like Facebook, Instagram, they're also businesses. They're not going to give 100% of your content viewer, like they're not going to share your content with 100% of your followers. They want you to pay to play. But my thing is, how can you leverage what they will give you to the maximum capacity? Video allows you to do that. So that's the second reason. The third reason is, again, I talked earlier, is that we do a lot of leveraging our content and repurposing it throughout our different channels and platforms. So we can kind of like look at it like Call of Duty. Like I like to surround my prospects and like, you know, it's like going to war, but like in a non-harmful way. I want to surround my prospects and make that contact, but I don't want to have to like work 7 times as hard because we want to be in 7 different places. So I love live video because to me, it's the easiest form of content to repurpose. Take a live video, strip the audio. Now it's a podcast episode. Take the live video, transcribe it. Now out of every live video, we typically get somewhere between 1 to 3 long form Instagram captions, 2 to 3 email newsletters. A lot of time they also are able to be repurposed into our show notes for our podcast. They become tweets. They become little mini Instagram story reels. We cut down the audio, pick a 1 to 3 minute clip. They're now IGTVs. Like you see you can take that video and redistribute it in a lot of different ways pretty simply. If I were only writing blog posts, I mean, at best I could take that written content and then turn it into an Instagram caption, but I can't go in reverse.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 main reasons why I prefer live video over any other medium.
So how do you recommend that people structure their live video to be effective? Like, do you have like a 3-part framework for how you're talking in your live video? Like, I imagine you don't just always, sometimes it's important to just be, in the moment. Okay, I'm walking down the street and I'm going to just share a real-time story. But to be effective, right, from a sales perspective, I imagine that you have more of a way of thinking about what you're going to say.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like what do I say first and what do I say next, but it's more about like, what is it I'm going to be talking about in totality on the live stream. Mm-hmm. So like I mentioned earlier, like there's a sales system that you have and there's a system that buyers have when they're making decisions. Most buyers don't consciously realize they're doing it, but they all have one. And the way that we teach it is something that we call the lean launch. I teach this in every program because this is literally how I was able to get my business to 6 figures, live video to sales call and close. We still use that same format today, but it's more about, like I said, not like, say this first, say this next on the call, but more about what is the topic of the content that you're going to be distributing it and what order you're going to be sharing it. So typically clients, there's 3 phases of awareness that a buyer goes through. Problem aware, where this is like kind of like if you go to the doctor's office and you have an itch, you don't really know what the problem is. You don't know if it's a bug bite, you don't know if it's a rash, you don't know if it's an allergic reaction. You're not aware of what your problem is. So the first type of content, or the first form of content you need to create, is how do you get your prospects to know what problem they actually have? Like, oh, you just got a bug bite. Okay, I know what my problem is. Now I go into solution aware. What is my solution? Do I need a shot? I don't know. Is it irreversible? Like, am I going to just die from this? Do I need an over-the-counter cream? They don't know what solution they need. So the second type of content you need to be creating is solution aware. Okay, what is the solution that solves that problem? Okay, you just need to go get a cream over the counter at CVS. Oh, okay, cool. Now that I know my problem, now that I know my solution, what is it that I actually need to buy? Which cream do I get? Do I get the CVS brand? I don't know, do I buy Neosporin? I don't know, another bug cream. But then you have to decide, and that's where you get that like why you aspect, is that 3rd phase. So our lean launch is and typically you have to align those stages of awareness with what your sales cycle is. Mm-hmm. From a moment somebody discovers you, how long does it typically take to get them to like make a buying decision? For most of our clients, it normally takes like a 2 to 3 month window. So we structure our lean launch over that 2-month window. And then you're making video content that talks about problem aware, solution aware, and then like the decision, like why you versus another brand or somebody else who's also selling what you're selling. So I think that's more important of like understanding the type of content that needs to be distributed more so than like the format once you share it. I mean, there's things that you can do to make the video delivery better. And all of our students, we give them like templates and scripts and outlines that they can follow. But the main thing is like, you can suck at, I don't want to say you can suck. You can be really poor at the delivery of it, but if it speaks to those phases of awareness, it'll still be effective.
Got it. And how are the phases of awareness? Because this is a really important, sort of fundamental marketing concept, right? Like understanding the phases that your customer are aware. How do those different than you talk about 8 types of content that business owners should be creating? Does that fall into the awareness category, or is that something?
When you say content they should be creating, you mean like repurposing?
I know you've talked about that in creating their content.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. So you've done your homework.
Yeah, yes.
You're so good. Like, I've never had anybody be like, no, Jay, you've talked about this before. Like, what was that? So in those 3 phases in awareness, like I said, there's problem aware, solution aware, and then like why you, why now. We've tried to make it, again, like what's the simplest way I could teach this to somebody else? Mm-hmm. And there's typically like different types of content that you can create in each one of those phases. So there's like a hook content that we use in problem aware, or like a misconception or a myth in the solution aware, or just like share your offer, like what is the thing it is that you're selling. So we use 8 core pieces of like specific topics within those 3 phases to make it easier for our clients to actually like know what content to be producing. And during a launch, we'll do that during a very tight time frame. But even after your targeted launch, like that's why, like, our lean launch, I kind of look at it as like you never stop marketing, you never stop selling, because and that's why I love video too, is like even after a launch, you can still use these 8 types of content in these 3 phases of awareness to just keep making ongoing content. So you're always, kind of like moving your audience through a sales cycle all the time, not just when you're trying to sell something. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yes, I love it. I always say ABS, always be selling.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Preparing people, whether it's you're in pre-sale or whether it's time to actually launch or get, it's having that content that really helps to keep people engaged. So it sounds like those are essentially sort of prompts, basically. People can think about those 3 phases of awareness and come up with different prompts for each phase that will help them to be more focused about what type of content that they can create in each phase in order to capture what phase that their customer is in when they.
You got it. And it makes it so simple for our clients, because a lot of the time, what I've noticed is a lot of other coaches don't teach content creation this way. I think a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I know some of the coaches I've hired in my earlier days, it's just like, you just need to be showing up regularly. And it's like, okay, I know I need to be showing up, but like, what am I supposed to be saying beyond just like, I made this cool product, go buy it. And when you really start to layer in these levels of psychology and like really start to understand like the psyche of how human beings make decisions, that's where these kind of 8 prompts and these 3 phases people talk about loosely. Like, you might hear somebody talking about it, but I think it's really important that understand that concept is great. But again, I always look at what is going to make it the easiest and the simplest way possible for my students to actually go implement. Understanding the strategy is an important aspect, but if they don't know how to apply it, like knowledge without, application is, people always say knowledge is power, but I think knowledge is only power once it's been applied.
Yes, I 100% agree.
So that's something that, again, like, I track my own content, what has worked well that moves people through this sales cycle. And I looked at my content. What type of content was it? Why was it effective? What order did I do it in that made it work? And then that's how a lot of time I come up with my frameworks in the process that I teach my clients. It's through me doing things myself and me also course correcting them, which really helps, like, oh, we need to break this down into some minute categories because it makes it easier for them to digest and go execute on it.
Yeah, I love that. So I love this idea about sales psychology. So for those of us who are like, me and you, who like to geek out on this stuff, where do you recommend that people go to? So first of all, if you're ready to act on learning more about sales, absolutely go get in touch with Jereshia. But if you want to just sort of learn more about the idea of sales psychology, then where would you recommend in terms of like, books or videos, or where can people go and sort of just geek out and learn more about sales psychology?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked. And this is like not even a shameless plug, but like I got people asking that question all the time. And so much of what I've learned is because I've studied how pastors preach and how they sell the gospel of God. I've studied a lot of like academic, how like professors teach curriculum and content, and the psychology behind how we remember things, how receiving information, how we make decisions. I've studied a lot of different industries to be able to come up, or at least better understand how this can work in our industry and with our sales and the type of stuff that we do. That's why I created the Right Response training. It is the most affordable thing I've sold since I started my business when I didn't know any better. But I know because this is probably one of the biggest gaps that most people have with being confident with going out and raising their rates, going out and being confident with selling at a higher end. So our Right Response training is where I would highly recommend people to go, because how many frameworks are in there? There's, I think, 4 or 5, there's like 5 different models that I teach that are all about sales psychology in direct correlation with how to sell on social media when you're trying to sell a premium price offer. I don't know anywhere else you can get all of that in one place. So that'd be the first place I would tell people to go. So like the first 2.5 hours of the training are just teaching you all the models. Okay. Again, it's very interactive. So like as I'm teaching it, you're also like doing the learning. And then we put together, I stayed on for another 2 hours last night and just role played. So very similar to like the objection of like, what do I say with a spouse? And people were just able to tell me what their objection was. And I would act as if I was the one selling it to them. And we debunked all those objections that they had. So if you want something specific to our industry, that's really where it is less than $100.
I believe that. So I'll make sure we link to that in the show notes so people can absolutely go grab that right away. That sounds amazing.
That'd be the first place I would start, because like it's very much it's designed around like online high-end sales. So it's you don't have to spend hours reading all these books and studying preachers like I did.
Okay, the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, this is a good Cliff Notes, and it's directly applicable. Like one thing that I love is that training we got done at like 10:30 last night. Like it was late.
Okay.
So many of our students were like staying up till 2 a.m, implementing what we taught. They're like, this was so good, I got to do it now. So just know that like, if you are ready to like just sharpen your skill in that area, you'll be able to immediately take action on it and start to see results the next day from what it is that you learned in that training.
Okay, awesome. So Jereshia, are there any, final tips that, you know what, actually, before we wrap, I'd love to hear more about, because I think this is a big part of being in this management phase that you talked about, is your team. So who's on your team right now and what do they do?
We're running a lean ship over here. So let me explain this. We literally have a part-time coach inside of Services That Sell. She's a contractor, and we have a part-time employee who's our marketing admin assistant and me. I have not been this lean. I mean, we have a podcast editor, but that's like quarterly. We do have a guy that writes our show notes for our podcast. It's also done quarterly because we batch it. So like he'll write 18 show notes for 18 episodes. And then we contract him again, but like ongoing, consistent day-to-day people, that's it. And myself. And the reason why because I show up to my mastermind groups and I tell them this, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like, what?
We are the most profitable we've ever been, and we are running a lean ship, and it is working really, really, really well. But the reason being is a lot of the time people look at their organizational chart and they just look at what roles do people need to do, what things need to be fulfilled. And I did that too, especially when I crossed over 100K to about 250. I'm like, I just started hiring people to do fulfillment, do things that I didn't want to do in my business. And what I realized at the end of last year is like, I'm still 100% responsible. Like I'm still the one that's driving all the revenue. And that can be very detrimental as you continue to grow your business, because then you become the bottleneck for your growth. And I decided, instead of looking at my organizational chart in regards to like what needs to get done, what needs to be fulfilled, I looked at the organizational chart is what is the one metric that every employee or every team member on my team will have that directly impacts our revenue and our bottom line. And if I cannot make a direct correlation to how their contributions are impacting our revenue and our profit margin, they're cut. So everybody got cut. Not everybody, most people got cut. Because some of the things that they were doing, it wasn't that it doesn't need to get done. It still does need to get done, but I'm looking at more cost-effective or more efficient ways because some things just have to happen. Like some things are not revenue generating. They're just fulfillment activities. That's fine. But a fulfillment role is going to be your least expensive person to hire because it's not connected to revenue. And some of these people I had on my team before, I was paying them as if they were in a revenue generating role when they were really just in a fulfillment role. So we're probably paying double or triple what we should have been paying for them.
Got it.
Just cut it. We ain't doing none of that this year. So the way I'm looking at my org chart now, and this is why I'm like, we're going to just cut down literally with Jessica, who's my admin assistant. She's amazing. We're going to be promoting her to full-time here soon because she's doing a phenomenal job. And then we have Monique, who is our STS coach. She really offers additional support inside of that community for our clients. This year alone, January, February, we have had the largest revenue that we've ever experienced in our business. We've had the largest increase in profitability that we've ever had in our business. And I'm sitting down thinking like, we've never been this lean, but it's because we've really dialed in on not just doing things because I saw other businesses doing it. You know, you go to these masterminds, these coaching programs, sometimes you can be overly influenced by how other people are doing things without properly screening or evaluating, is this right for me in this season? It can be really easy to just like mimic what you see others doing.
Yeah, I need an integrator. I need this. I need all these things. And it's just, it's not true.
Like, do you? And it's like, do they even need all that? Or are they just like buying into the hype?
Right.
And one thing I noticed too is like, this is like off topic, but I think it'd be relevant, is we can be so caught on mimicking somebody else because we see that they're quote unquote successful, but you never really know what's going on behind closed doors. And that's something that I've really learned, why I really value transparency, why I am so like open book during interviews. Like whatever you ask, we will share, because I always like people to know like what is required to get the result that people are promising on these sales pages. Like what sacrifices did these business owners have to make to have the quote unquote lifestyle that they're highlighting on their social media reels? And sometimes there can be a disconnect from what you see and what like the sacrifices really were. And it can be really easy to just mimic like, oh, they have these big teams, I need to go hire this big team. And it's like, that's not even necessary for what our goals and objectives are. So we're in the process now of hiring. I'm transitioning more away from, what am I trying to say? We're getting rid of contractors, or just reallocating and like better defining what roles are better to have as a contract role versus what roles we want to have like permanent in-house. And again, everybody's role, like everybody has a metric that they're responsible for every week that directly impacts our revenue. Right. And everybody has clear line of sight on that. When I say everybody, it's the three of us, but we all know what we're doing that is going to move the business forward from a revenue and profit standpoint. And I think that's why we're experiencing 2 months into 2020, the largest revenue months we've ever had. And I love the bottom line, like the double bottom line positive impact is the largest profit margins we've had. Yeah. So
what are the metrics that your assistant and your coach are being charged with delivering on?
Yeah, so one thing that my coach doesn't have this responsibility because she's more in a fulfillment role, but both me and Jessica, my marketing admin, like I always say, sales is a contact sport and conversions happen through conversation. And one thing that we talked about on this training and right response was like, you have to talk to strangers. Yeah. Like you got to get really comfortable talking to people that you don't know, sliding in DMs, like replying to people. So one of the metrics that she has is, well, she has a couple metrics, but one that is like, I think critical for her is how many new conversations is she starting every week? Because we know that conversions happen through conversations, sales is a contact sport. The more contact and conversations that we can be having, the better we know. And we know our numbers. We know that if we talk to X number of people, we'll get so much money in sales. So like, it's just a numbers game at that point. Yeah. Just did you make enough contact? So that's a metric that she has. For me, I have to do at least 3 live videos every week. Because I know, if I do every time, the more videos I do, the more revenue we make. It happens all the time. Sometimes I just don't have like the energy to do it.
Right.
But that means there's something going on in the business where I am depleting my capacity or my energy that's pulling me away from a revenue generating activity. Because I know, again, because of the data and the metrics, that 1 month we did like a Hot Hustle morning show. I went live every day, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. for a month. Every time, we've done that twice. Every time I've done that, my revenue doubled. And it's just like, bruh. You know what we need to do. It's just go make more contact, Jay. So like, that's a metric that I have, because again, it's like, I don't want you guys just to mimic what metrics I'm sharing right now, but like make sure that you pay attention to what metrics move the needle in your business. Like because I know, because of the data, if we start this many conversations, this many clients will close. I know that if I do this many live stream videos, it'll generate this much revenue. So like those, when you understand your, like the performance metrics that really move the needle, those need to become
their business.
Those need to become the things that you track on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. Exactly.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, this has been so amazing, Jereshia. Thank you. So let's just wrap up with you've shared so much here today. What do you think people should do in terms of their next steps? If they're like, this was so amazing, like where should I start? What are the 3 action steps? And then tell us where people can find out more about you and your programs.
Yeah, first thing that I would do, because we're talking about sales, is you need to set a revenue goal. Not no funny business of I want 6 figures. No, pick a number. Okay. What is your number? What is your number? How much do you want to make this year?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, how much do I want to make this year? This year, I want to make $600K.
600K. Okay. Yeah. So you know what your number is.
Yeah.
Then I want you to be able to say like, where are you at right now? And you don't have to say that, but what's the gap between where you are and where you want to be? I don't know if you want to share that or not. But whatever your gap is, you need to know what your gap is. And then once you know your gap, I want you to figure out how many clients you need to enroll to close that gap. So like, I don't know if you can do the math real quick. How many clients would you need to get a yes for you to close that gap from, well, whatever that gap number
50.
is?
I know, exactly. 50 people.
So you need 50 people to close that gap.
Yeah.
So if you know that, I want you to put 50 people on a Post-it note, like put a Post-it note on your computer, or get out a big like Post-it board, those big like massive Post-it notes. I love getting those up. Put those on a wall. I want you to put 50 blank Post-it notes on your wall.
Yeah. And
every single day you need to be responsible for, did I talk to at least one person today and share my offer with them? Like you need to be like, that's the only thing I would do. Like I would get like recon, like aggressive of put that number somewhere visibly in front of you. And every single day you can self-evaluate and say, am I doing something that's moving the needle or pulling me away? Am I getting closer to like making these conversations, or am I not? Have I talked to at least one stranger today, started one conversation, shared my offer at least in some way? Every single day. Like that would be the thing that I would tell you to do. If you can commit to that for the next 90 days, I guarantee your revenue will go up.
Yes.
So that would be my call to action for everybody. I get really hot. I'm like, calm down, Jay. That would be my call to action. And then like where you can hang out more, like my biggest thing, like you mentioned before, is I want you to implement. I want you to execute. Like you would not be listening to this episode or still here right now if there was not something that you desire to see done differently in your business or see differently with the results you're seeing. So all I would want you to do is send me a direct message on Instagram at Jereshia Hawk. Take a picture of this board you just created. And just, that's all I want you to do. Don't go download anything I've made. Unless you need the training, go get the training. But other than that, I just wanted to see you implement and take action from what we've talked about today. So I would love if you guys would either just share what your gap number is with me, how many clients you need to close, or take a picture of your board and just tag both of us on Instagram or send me a direct message.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. So share some gap numbers. We want to know. So my gap is a little over 400K. That's what I have to do to get to my number. I want to know where you are. So just share that and go check out Jereshia because she's amazing. You just heard everything in this episode. So thanks so much for listening. And I look forward to seeing you or hearing you or talking to you next